let's talk about how we can explain trees being wizened elders. Hello everyone, welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. You may have noticed that this video is a quick tips for DMs rather than any of the, what class are we going to vote on to cover next? It's because, well, we've got a lot of big family things happening here at the Gamer's Den. Within the storied halls of the Nexus Libram, we have added another apprentice storyteller to the family. It's amazing, it's incredible, it's exhausting, time-consuming, but altogether worth it if you're ready to be a parent and all of that. So, without me gassing on too much about things going on, hopefully I've remembered to put up some kind of announcement that our regularly scheduled stuff will not be going, but today's video was prompted by a commenter some time back, an HP, about how the hell is a tree supposed to be this wizened elder, this intelligent creature with so much wisdom to pass on to all these shorter-lived creatures, especially when they're rooted in one spot for the entirety of their lives, whether it's 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 years. How are they supposed to learn anything about the outside world? I took that as a challenge. Not in the sense that I am offended. My sensibilities have been, I've lost my train of thought there for a polite, family-friendly-ish word to describe that. How could my sensibilities have been so set off? No. It's more of, ooh, that's a good question. And I had some ideas and I threw one out there for HP, which hopefully you got that. Hopefully it came across as informative, friendly, bit of discussion rather than me being all snarky. So before we get into the answer though, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on such an incredible roster of legendary heroes, then go on down to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. But now, let's actually talk about how we can make trees and ents and all of these different forest spirits and creatures inherently intelligent and wise beings in a manner that makes sense beyond, it's magic. Now, with forest spirits and stuff, with things like dryads you can kind of get away with hand-waving a little bit in the it's magic kind of a thing. But that still doesn't explain the wider amount of trees, assuming that you give them some form of intelligence or wisdom. How do we go ahead and go about doing that? And the answer lies in the roots. Not just the roots of the question or any of the words, but the actual roots of the trees. Most diagrams and things that we see, or the images that we have of tree roots, for the most part, we have this idea that they reach so deep into the ground, almost as deep into the ground as they are tall above it. But that's not actually how most trees really form their roots. Most of them actually spread out in a broad, wide area. About within the first, 3-ish feet of the ground, that's where you're going to find most of the root system. Occasionally you get some that kind of dig deeper, that kind of sprout off some of the lower roots, but for the most part, they reach broadly around them. So that means in forested areas, the tree's roots actually kind of connect and intermingle a little bit. And to top it off, they actually have a symbiotic relationship with several species of fungi. Fungi that grow up in and around the roots that help to facilitate those connections and actually allow the trees to communicate chemically with one another. Not to the point that they're actually able to send and divert resources to one another. And it's been found that trees that are connected with offspring trees that came from their own seeds, they will actually favor them with more nutrients. So there is a level of a kind of intelligence there. Now, is it something that you could describe as human-like? I mean, I guess it depends on how you want to slice it or look at it, but you can see that there is something there. And really, what is our intelligence but a chemical reaction of some sort? It's chemical and electrical with all these little impulses firing off all these little proteins and things going along our neurons and all these different chemical things happening with serotonin, dopamine, and many other chemicals. Gosh, I lost my train of thought again. Happening a lot lately. But you get the idea, though, that there is communication happening. There is resource sharing happening. So think about what that means. These trees are all interconnected, and these fungi are interconnected with them. It's not that hard or that big of a stretch to think that, well, all these shrubs and smaller plants growing up, they're also connected and tapped into this root system as well. So it wouldn't be too big of a stretch from that point for trees to be sharing information with one another. Information about things that are going on in other parts of the forest. And depending on how big the forest is, that's a lot of information that can be shared and gathered fairly quickly. Now, if you start mixing in other animals and the like, you have deer, you have birds, moose, elk, bears, badgers, all the different insects, all of these different ants and butterflies and woodpeckers and all of these other creatures that just inhabit and populate the forest. That can be a lot of information as well too. And just bear in mind that as humans, our ability to hear, we're only hearing a fraction of the sounds out there. Not even a fraction. We're hearing a percentage of a percent of a fraction of all the audible noise that's out there. It's inaudible to us because our ears are not equipped to hear all of that. And same thing with the light spectrum. We're only seeing a very small spectrum of light. I mean, the fact that we don't actually know what yellow looks like, it's just an approximation that our brain amalgamates. That's just a lot of information that we're not able to perceive or hear. So feasibly, possibly, animals are communicating on spectrums and frequencies that we can't understand at all. So it wouldn't be too big of a stretch then to say, well, trees and animals are able to communicate to some degree, or at the very least that trees are able to observe what animals are doing. And just, if you go with that step of animals can communicate with plants and trees, well, think about migratory birds. Those go pretty damn far, and it's not unusual for them to frequent to be frequenting inhabited spaces by different sorts of humanoids. So elves, humans, dwarves, orcs, all of these different creatures, they can observe and interact. And then you also have that next step of druids. Druids are able to speak with plants, they can speak with animals, and so they can communicate all that information. And just think about the information network that's available to a druid then. If we continue on with this idea that a druid can speak with a plant, and that plant can communicate with all these other plants, and they can share information all across the forest. That's huge. That's massive. And then, you could get even weirder and wilder with it by making them part of a hive mind. Each tree is like a neural node, and the different kinds of fungi are those different little roots and neural pathways. They facilitate that communication. You could create this genius loci hive mind intelligence that is just so vastly incomprehensible and we're not even taught that, and that's beyond the fact that what a tree perceives and how it looks at the world around us would be so incomprehensible to us to begin with. So a hive mind made up of trees would be just that much more so wild and incomprehensible to us. So you very much could be getting a wildly different perspective, insight from trees that are capable of learning from various other creatures, and then druids can tap into that and add to that knowledge and exchange with it and really sharpen and hone that kind of information. And then you tap in the fact that trees can easily live hundreds or thousands of years if left undisturbed and given proper care and the like, regular burning off of lower shrubs and trees, and dead trees and fallen trees and all those kinds of things that can add fuel to larger forest fires. Regular controlled burnings could allow trees to last an incredibly long time. But I'm getting into so many different subjects, so let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Is there anything that you would think of adding to that overall? Because it's definitely a fascinating subject and is one way of going about explaining how trees are intelligent by doing more than just waving off and going, it's just magic, don't overthink it. Overthinking things can be a lot of fun sometimes and lead into just wild ideas, I think anyways. And remember, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.